Well, today on Rethink Real Estate, I've got Mike Ross and Nathan Ganz. They are the heads of a financial planning company. Now, it's not only just that. Again, I want to make sure that I emphasize this early on so that I don't lose your attention, is the fact that these guys are offering services just to real estate professionals that ultimately they need. 90% of their clientele is real estate based. They've written a book around the financial blueprint for real estate agents is the name of that book. These gentlemen, I really enjoyed this conversation as we talk about strategies when it comes to tax, financial planning, everything along those lines. And you may think that this is going to be a boring episode that's just all of the same. It's not. It's around strategies. It's around things that are missed. And again, I'm looking forward to a continued relationship with them on Rethink Real Estate as we sort of map out what is something that I think is relatively neglected in the real estate space, which is people's financial literacy. So hope you enjoy, hope you come out of it with something, but also hope that you can implement something that ultimately saves you having to pay the tax man more. Thanks so much. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Mike, Nathan, welcome to Rethink Real Estate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be here.
So this is perfect, and while I'm going to say this is perfect, is my guy Chris, who cuts up all of these episodes and all that type of stuff. Every now and then I'll do a podcast with two people on it, okay? And he'll like get all shitty because, well, now I've got to change the template that I've got to cut it to and all this stuff. You guys are just making his life so much easier with the two of you on screen at the moment, so thank you.
You're very welcome. You should have heard the dialogue and conversations we had about whether we should do it this way, and then we picked correctly.
Yes.
Good stuff, good stuff. But first question that I typically ask any guest that comes on is that why should someone hang around and listen to the podcast episode?
You go, Bert. Yeah, well, we should rehearse that part. Yeah, so I think the reason why a lot of people should be listening in and tuning in right now is because we are revolutionizing the game of how you look at tax strategies and do bookkeeping. So my business partner and I really have come from more of a financial representative advising background. And we've taken everything we've learned over the course of the years in that area and brought it into more of a business-owned light where you can now look at your profit and loss statements and tax planning, creative ideas and different, I guess, just more of a, actually, Nathan, yeah, you're right. Glad you can cut this and edit this out. I wanted you to answer that.
No problem. I can answer that question.
Yeah, let's redo that one. You can answer that.
Boys. We're keeping this raw. We're keeping it real. Nathan, I want to hear your pitch. We're keeping all of this. This is awesome.
Oh, beautiful.
The real answer is because over and over and over again, we have proven that we can help people keep tremendous amounts more of their money in a way that really impacts their families and their businesses. And we know that beyond any shadow of a doubt that we are going to make a tremendous and positive financial impact in people's lives.
Well, I think that just so that you understand, like, I think that people will resonate with the fact that, guys, I appreciate, again, the pitch side of things and having to sell things. But at the end of the day, you guys there's an element that if you can pitch me, that's fine. But it's in the execution that it's going to work out. So the reality is that I already know that from a few people within our group that you guys can execute. You know, we were introduced to each other through Jennifer Mabin. Jennifer Mabin's one of the best business owners that we have, probably runs one of the most effective real estate businesses in all of Oregon, and one of the better businesses that we know from a production per salesperson. And again, the thing that I really enjoy is that you guys have geared yourself to the real estate industry, right?
Correct.
So let's talk about some of the things that you see that are the biggest problems within a real estate agent's business. And the reason that I want to go there first is because of the fact that, you know, us as a corporate business, us dealing with as many that we do, whether it be internally within our own company, externally through our auction process, the reality is that financial literature, I guess, or financial aptitude, or, you know, the financial IQ, I would go as far as to say is the lowest spectrum of what I see most of the time from an independent contractor perspective. Whether it's be in real estate, whether it be a mortgage, whether it be whatever, the reality is let's keep it real estate related. So first and foremost, what do you see that is the biggest issue when it comes to agents and their financial situation?
Yeah, I would say from my perspective and from our perspective, what we've seen is a lot of people recruit people into the real estate industry because they are really good at talking to people, personable. They're good networkers. They have, there's something in the salesy aspect of it that they want to bring onto their team. The problem is that we've realized, I think it's 80% that we saw, 80% of real estate agents across the country don't really have any formal sales training background.
87 was the stat I read. 87% have no formal sales
Makes
training.
total sense.
Yeah, so they get recruited into this new field, and then they end up being really good at the beginning, but they don't necessarily come from a business background. So a lot of these people get recruited in, start making some money, connections, and they're just kind of diving in head first. And then all of a sudden, they're realizing, crap, I have to pay taxes at the end of the year. I need to,
yeah, what are taxes?
How do I file this form? Should I be this? Should I be that? And we live in like an age where you get information from everywhere, right? You get it from like Dave Ramsey, Robert Kiyosaki, your team leads, your best friend, your mom, your dad. And so many generations are just trying to pitch what's best for them that you kind of get lost in the mix. Yeah. And then the other thing we've noticed is over the course of so many years, real estate agents make this transfer from being like a salesperson to a business owner, and they don't even know it. But they became business owners by default the second they decided to be a real estate agent.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I think that the one thing that I want to sort of point out is that, and I'll make reference to it to those that are watching. Obviously, I'm putting the book up on the screen at the moment, but obviously you guys can get this on Amazon. You were kind enough to send me a copy of it, a couple of copies of it. The Financial Blueprint for Real Estate Agents. I've had a couple of people from a financial perspective that have come onto the podcast, and we've spoken about financials and everything along those lines. No one's actually been able to put it into literature and give an actual plan to it. And I think that that's really important because the nature of this structure can be so confusing that sometimes it needs to be mapped out step by step. But I guess that you guys probably deal in 2 degrees. Is that one, somebody that's just starting to make a little bit of money in real estate and starts to actually be a bit conscious of their situation financially. 2, people that have been doing real estate for a long time and have really not handled the business properly. So therefore, you're going back through and having to sort of probably mop up the mess, so to speak, with all due respect, okay? And then 3 that might have done a relatively good job but just don't want to worry about it too much further as well. So the thing that I'm really curious about is what are the situations you see the most out of those 3? Being new, getting into it, conscious of it, starting to make money, need to do something now because they don't really get it. 3 have been doing it a long time and have really screwed it up and need to help them out, or maybe just don't want to worry about it.
I would say between 2 and 3.
Okay.
So I mean, once people have to pay the IRS an amount of money that they're uncomfortable with, it gets real serious real fast. We had somebody come to us the other day. They said we had to pay $200,000 to the IRS. I was like, well, let's make sure that never happens again. Like, that's crazy. Like, nobody wants to write a 6-figure check to the IRS, especially if they're not expecting it. And that was just a byproduct of, like Mike said, they became a business owner by default and not really by design, and didn't have any structure or planning in place other than, hey, we're going to go make a shitload of money, and great job, you did it. And now you lost it all because you didn't do any planning. There's no structure. There's no plan in place or strategy in place. And so the book that you just mentioned, one of the things we really like about it is it's written just for real estate agents. So at the end of every chapter, there's like, here's the key points and here's 3 action items. Like, just do the 3 things. And if you did that in every chapter, if you did that by the end of the book, you'd pretty much have what you pay us thousands of dollars for, other than us just holding your hand. So those people who are really self-starters, they can get all that done because the mission of our company is to advocate for real estate agents. Mm-hmm. And so the reason we wrote the book was because we didn't feel like we were able to advocate on a broad enough scale, one-to-one or doing events and classes. Like, we have to get this out of our heads and our minds and our spirits and into this book so that we can actually fulfill our mission on a bigger scale. And so that book is exactly what you said. It's like, if you don't know what you're doing, you're coming in here because you're doing a good job, you're making some money, and all of a sudden you're like, what in the hell am I doing? Like, how do I handle this stuff? It's just a step-by-step process. It's written at like a 9th grade reading level, so everybody should be able to understand it. We wrote it, so it's not super fancy, and so because that's our level of reading too.
Do you have a version at like a 2nd year reading level? I'd prefer that. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. We were actually talking the other day, like we're in the middle of doing the audiobook because a lot of people have been asking for an audiobook, but then we thought of an idea. But I don't know what you think about this idea. We want to do the audiobook, but with our commentary in it.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Do you think that'd be a good idea?
Well, so the cool thing about there's a book that I'm audioing at the moment as I run, is that it's Scott Galloway's Algebra of Wealth, and I really like Scott Galloway. I listen to his podcast, all this type of stuff. I just really enjoy his stuff, probably because of how crass he is. Like, he just speaks so much shit. But his version of the audiobook, it's literally like listening to him do a podcast, and I love it. I'm going to re-listen to it like probably 10 times. Don't get me wrong, the message is incredibly simple. Okay. And it's probably along the same lines as your book, to be honest with you. But the reality of him doing it and actually knowing him a little bit more, all of your clients will probably end up listening to it then at that point, because it's you two and your commentary and all of those different things. So I would love to see that. But
We'll do it.
Yeah. Getting back to
we're doing the straight audiobook, and then we're doing the audiobook with commentary and laugh about like what we were thinking about when we wrote it, or like a particular scenario, or like give more in depth, because you can only get into so much nuance in writing and keep it interesting, right? Like, if you get in the nitty gritty just in writing, only a very few select people are going to enjoy it. In fact, like one area of the book, we talk about life insurance, which is not a very fun topic, but as a business owner and as a primary income earner, like non-negotiable topic for us to discuss with our clients, right? But we get into one part of it, we're like, hey, in this next part, we're going to get into the weeds, and you're more than welcome to skip the next 2 pages. And like we tell them, like, we give you a warning. I'm telling you, it's going to get crazy. It's going to get annoying. Like, if you want to keep reading, go ahead. But if you don't, and then 2 pages later, there's a big bold that says, jump back in here. Because we know that like it's not everybody's going to enjoy that. But for the people who do, it's nice to have that maybe additional concept, where the background of where something came from. And so I think we're going to have a good time with that. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, because you got both our personalities in that book too, which is nice. So you will be able to say, like, this part you can clearly tell was Nathan's, this part was clearly mine. Like, you know, it'll be a good time reading that book out, because we didn't hire a ghostwriter for that. It was just us who wrote the whole thing. So our personalities shine through.
That's great. So tell me about the evaluation process. Say that an agent comes to you and they're like, hey, I need your help. How do you evaluate that person, the current situation? What is the process to get them to the point that they become, a client of yours, obviously, but what's the level of evaluation, and what's the level of sort of because there's no doubt it's like, hey, show me what you can do for me so that I can appreciate this even further. Like, do you evaluate volume? Like, how does it all work?
Yeah, so we take a discovery call initially, and it's just really me just getting information from, their current situation. Like,
it's
what
basically
their pain
an
points are.
interrogation.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. It's a million questions.
There are times they come to us for for different reasons, right? I'm not going to sell them on something they don't need. I want to know what is it that we can do to be a value for you. To your point, there's some people who just make, a lot of money and they just don't know what they're doing, so they want the full gamut of what we offer. There's other people who are like, hey, I like doing bookkeeping and accounting. I just need some guidance and some strategies. And then there's other people who are like, I just don't want to do any of it. Please take it off my plate. I'll pay you whatever you want. Yeah. Right. So I really want to know where a value we can be, because some people really do, and they should be reading these profit and loss statements, because business owners need to know their numbers. Right. Mm-hmm. But there's other people who just want us to do the work, and they're just happy knowing it's off their plate.
Yeah.
Right. So the initial call is just figuring out what are your needs, what are your wants, and how can we be of value from our services to you. And then after that, it's not necessarily about how much money they're making. It's the amount of transactions that they have, and amount of work and detail they want to see, right? So if a real estate agent comes to us, or a solo agent, it's just them, single member S corporation, that's a different conversation than someone who owns a brokerage who wants a profit and loss statement per agent to see, what agents are making me money, where it's not, where am I losing it, versus somebody who wants us to manage, their 4 rental properties they have, and do strategies like cost segregation studies and stuff, and talk about should they be in LLCs or holding companies or what. So the initial call really is just discovery and figuring out what they know, what they want us to talk about, and then we'll figure out the value proposition we can offer them. But that's pretty much
so we also do like an audit on their current books. If they have any bookkeeping at all, we perform an audit at free for every client. That's something we do. So to your point, like, it's, what really everybody cares about is what can we do for them, right? And so in that audit, again, because we're so mission focused in what we're trying to accomplish, we do that audit for free. We give them the information. We say, here's all the things we see in your book. Here's also the opportunities that we see, and here's how that might impact you from a tax perspective. They can take that and do that with whoever they want to. We really strongly believe that if we continue to do that on an exceptional job, and we provide that level of value up front, that when they need somebody, they can't go anywhere else, because who else provided them with all the expertise and the understanding. So we do the audit. We share with them exactly what we would do, why we would do it, and what the impact would be to them, their businesses, and their families. And then at that point, it's just a simple, are we good at working together or not? And is the price right? And and then we're off to the races.
Well, I think that there's a couple of avenues that we can go down to sort of just dig a little bit into the weeds here, because I like the idea of you guys doing an a la carte service to somebody that ultimately what they need, in that discovery call. What would you say is the number one thing that most agents are not thinking about right now that they're deficient in? Like, if we were going to go, hey, there's the one thing that continues to come up, have a think about it. But like, it's one of those things like that just continues to pop up in everybody.
Yeah,
it's a great question. I'm gonna think about
strategies for me is what I'm thinking, because they're always like, my bookkeeper and CPA just do.
Yeah, that's probably it. I would say for us, the number one issue is missed opportunities.
Yep.
And where those missed opportunities come from vary, right? So the vast majority of missed opportunities come because there's not good data.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have good data, you can't have an effective strategy because the data is wrong. So the premise of all the ideas is wrong. And so when we clean up the data, that gives us the opportunity to find all the opportunities. That is probably the number one thing. And that comes from maybe poor tracking or poor reporting or poor, like you said, financial literacy. Like, they don't know what they don't know. They didn't know that he needed a business account. They didn't know that they needed an LLC. They didn't know, I could be an S corp at a certain income level and I could save money. Like, just the overall data and like the missed opportunities is significant, because a lot of people do a lot of things right.
Yep.
And then they just don't know that there's other things. So for example, we say oftentimes that, most bookkeepers are really good at doing the bookkeeping for whatever's in the books. Very few bookkeepers are good at finding what's not in the books.
That's really
and I think that's what differentiates us a lot from other firms, because we're an expert with real estate agents. That's 90% of our clients are real estate agents. And so it's like, it's all we do all day long. It's what we eat, breathe, drink, sleep, think about.
Yeah.
And so when I can see a good set of books, I could tell you within a few minutes how much money I can save somebody, what the impact's going to be, and how that's going to benefit somebody's financial life.
Right. So just showing a little bit of vulnerability for a moment, like, so that the audience can actually lean into it a tiny bit more, hopefully, is it because I'm sure that ego gets in the way several times from actually picking up the phone and actually, having a conversation with you guys and go, hey, I need your help. I think there's a level of vulnerability that has to be given there. But to be honest, though, you said something before, you're a business owner by default, not by design. Typically, I'm a real estate agent that become, a business owner that then became the CEO of a franchise company that ultimately had to get an understanding of all of this along the way, and being vulnerable in all of those moments with, our accounts manager, our CFO, and all of those things to go, I actually don't know whether you're taking me for a ride or not. I have zero idea right now to that level of insight. There's an element that becomes irresponsible of going, I don't deal with that stuff. I just let my accountant deal with it. I think that's a bullshit response. I think it's horrible. It's just a complete and utter cop-out. And it just means that you're like, it's like somebody that says to me now, I don't do my own emails. I don't even look at that anymore. I get my assistant to do it. It's like, how much business do you miss out on? How much, there's a part of that like, it just really rubs me up the wrong way. But again, is that learning all of this, like I have a saying within my own business, just from what I know now that I didn't know back in the day, is that I don't believe profit and loss statements close companies. Loss doesn't close companies. Cash flow closes companies.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that it's amazing to see when you sit down with our business owners, right? Because we do this as from a corporate perspective, and because we're very involved with our people, is that I had a brand new business owner that went through this stage of absolute panic because he's like, I've got nothing I've really got a limited amount of money in the bank. And to actually sit there and look at his pipeline with him from a volume of listings, go through the percentage of list to close ratio, to then how much money could possibly come in the pipeline, even if there was a worst case Armageddon situation, and map that out from a cash flow perspective, he found out that out of the deals that he had in his pipeline, that we were going to keep the doors open for the next 18 months regardless, even if no one else closed another thing.
Wow.
So being able to do that with them and having the vague understanding of the even cash flow, profit and loss, his P&L was horrible. Like, you don't want to look like, but and if he just looked at the loss that he was taking in a couple of months, he's like, oh, it's all gone. I'm screwed. It's not going to work out, and whatever it is. But to take them through and temper them through a cash flow was something that really helped them in that moment. And I'm assuming that's kind of like what you guys do in some situations with your clients as well, and getting that deep into the weeds, right?
For sure. I'd also say that highly successful people all run towards accountability. Always. So finances is pretty fucking vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's as personal as it gets. It's your money because, listen, we have clients that we know that have canceled because they can't afford whatever our monthly fee was. I think, we have clients that are like $400 a month. They can't afford it, but then you see them out. They're buying people drinks. They're going to, exactly what's happening because you see all the real numbers. But that level of transparency and authenticity is scary for a lot of people. But as you just said, that's the only way to get better.
Yeah.
The only way to get better is to just be laid bare, open it all up, run towards accountability, run towards professionalism, put your effort and your energy in it, learn what you need to learn. They don't need to learn what we need to learn, but they need to know enough that they can make good financial decisions, understand a financial statement, be able to, like you said, dissect, like, hey, do I have enough business coming in? What's my pipeline? How does that look? Like, that's business like 101.
Yeah.
We're not even getting into the fancy stuff. We're getting into is my cash flow sustainable?
Yeah.
Is a very basic business conversation. And every real estate agent should at least understand that from a philosophical standpoint without question, because all of the top agents do that. Now, they might have people helping them like us or hire CPAs, but I guarantee you, if we sat down and talked about you with your business, you're going to have a really good understanding of what's happening in your business from a financial perspective. And the reason I know that is because you're here right now doing what you're doing. You can't get to where you are and just have a layman's approach, like laissez-faire, like, I guess I'll figure it out when I figure it out. Yeah. That's a doomsday approach for a business of any size, especially one that's reliant on one person to generate all the revenue.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, we love being a part of that process. I think what people experience is once they do that, just the freedom and the relief and the lack of stress that comes off.
Nathan, I think you've hit a point there that I wanted to kind of just really double click on, is that the thing that, because there's the people that are egotistical in the sense that they promote themselves to be a person that maybe they're not financially, and that's okay. So them opening up and being vulnerable is probably a prickly situation for them. But then that goes to the counter angle of that, is that somebody that's way too vulnerable and becomes a victim towards this stuff of, I can't handle it, and I don't know what to do here, and becomes a victim to the element of it. And I think that's a part where getting that surety, what you guys are providing, in the surety of knowing that it's going to be taken care of. Because there's another part of this that I see also. This is where I lean back into the cash flow element of things and understanding, is that I didn't realize people's lack of understanding when we've got business partners in offices where they're like, okay, well, we made $100,000 for the month. Yeah. So where's my 25 grand? It's like, whoa. It doesn't work that way. What do you mean? No. There's only X amount in the bank account, in the general account. So at the end of the day, we can't, from a balance sheet perspective, we can't disperse the full amount, nor should we. And then there's the other angle of things that people are like, we've got $300,000 in the general account. Should we, take a disbursement of 150? No, don't do that. Like, we've got some big stuff coming up here. Like I don't know, the market might change, and I'm not sure. You've got the paranoid, and then you've got the ones that are like, gimme, based on the P&L. Like it's that. Yeah. Do you see that as like, how do you temper that? Because I'm sure that there's an element also that's an interesting relationship with you and your clients, is that there's the ones that are like, gimme, and you're like, no, you can't. And then there's the other ones that are like, no, just keep it all in there for a rainy day. And then they get a massive tax bill at the end of the year because, or you help them strategize in a different way because they're paranoid.
Well, there are sound financial principles that just work all the time. And so relying back to those is really wonderful. And I think, again, going back to, like you said, ego, getting your ego out of it, both of those sides have a lot of ego. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds like the guy who's scared isn't based on ego, but it's all ego, because what do they want to be? They ultimately want to be right.
Yeah, okay.
That's what they're scared about. They're scared of being wrong, and their ego is at play, and they just want to be right. I told you it was going to be a down market. I told you we're supposed to save our money. And the other person is just as arrogant, right? So it's a matter of ego, instead of just submitting themselves to a proper financial process that involves like, hey, what do we have this year, this month, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road? There's always a strategy. There's always a solution. There's always some way to get everybody something that they want in that solution. We don't really get into a lot of difficult conversations like that, to be honest. As you're talking, I'm like, I can't really think of the last time we really got in a situation like that. Because for us, it's like, if somebody's doing things the way that we ask them to do that, it just doesn't come up.
Yeah.
It just doesn't come up. I'll give you an example. One of the ways that becomes a problem, the number one way that becomes a problem was when an agent thinks that their commission is their income.
Yep.
But gross commission never equals income. That's revenue. And so again, like Mike was saying, like being like transitioning into a business owner, that is a business owner way of thinking. Like Mike and I have a lot of revenue, but that doesn't equal income, right? So like we have to have wise, sound, good financial practices. We need to make sure that we have payroll. I mean, we're going to do, 600,000, 700,000 of payroll this year, right? So it's like, you got to make sure that payroll, like you got to, like we've made commitments to people.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we don't fuck around with is our commitment. If we say we're going to do something, like I'm going to hire you for X and you got to pay this, you better be damn sure we're paying them on time and completely every single time. And that's never going to be an error. Well, we have to be smart about that. So we can't just take all of the money to ourselves and be like, well, I guess the employees get screwed this month.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that doesn't really work, or we can't pay our taxes. And so there's good, sound, basic financial principles. But I would say that Mike, maybe I'd like your opinion, but I haven't had a conversation like that with a client in years.
Right.
Yeah. And it helps too, because we do offer like quarterly profit and loss reviews to our client. It's an additive to the bookkeeping aspect of it. But I mean, I just did one the other day with a client and they were like, well, we're spending this last quarter, we spent $20,000 in contractors and about 10,000 of that they didn't produce any money. So they're going to let those people go and they're going to redirect that $10,000 into marketing and advertising, because then their hope is to get 10X from that. Right. So they're just good, but they know their numbers, they're seeing it. They ask my opinion on it. And then there's other realtors, who had a really slow first quarter. So they're starting to panic a little bit because the plan was, this is my plan from last year. But then what we did is I showed them their 2023 and their 2022 year-end profit and loss statements. And we went through the whole year and we saw where the ups and downs were. So it helped them like have peace of mind knowing that, oh yeah, you're right, I forgot. This is usually where the end of the year is obviously where all my income comes in usually. So I know it's on its way. I know my numbers. It's going to be okay. And like you said, how much is in your pipeline? So we really become their financial advocates and throughout more than just the monthly profit and loss statements. If they want to take advantage of the quarterly profit and loss reviews, that's where Nathan and I really enjoy what we do, is because that's what we started this company doing, is not just the bookkeeping became just a necessity for what we were originally doing at the consulting, because we would do all these strategies, but then we'd have to go find bookkeepers to implement them.
To implement them. Yeah, for
and
sure.
They did it wrong.
Yeah, then they did it
or argue with us.
Yeah. So there's two closing questions that I want to ask you both. The first one is it's a quick one. I want it to be a quick one. Is this is going to sound stupid, but how all the short form stuff that you get, like all of this, there's so much tax advice or strategy advice in short form, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, whether it's whatever, that comes up in your feed. How much of that you guys see is complete bullshit?
Half at least.
Right. That's interesting to note. I think that's just a really interesting note for everybody out there, that you cannot build a sound philosophy of financials off TikTok or Instagram Reels. Okay.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Well, so I have a 13-year-old son, and he and I were talking about Google and how you can't trust Google for everything. So what we did was we were at a coffee shop, me and my boy. We're actually playing chess, of all weird things. We love playing chess together. So we were playing chess, and I did a Google search. I said, hey, I said, let me show this. So I did a Google search and I said, 10 reasons you should drink coffee every day. And I got all these articles. And then I did it again. I said, 10 reasons you should never drink coffee. And we got all of these articles and all these things. I'm like, well, whatever you want to find is what you're going to find. If you want to think that you're
bias,
and you think that you've got like all these cool quips and tricks and all these sorts of things, and you're basing it off TikTok, you're going to get fucked.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it goes. Like, excuse my French, but that's how bad it really is. Yeah. Because you just can't take advice from that kind of stuff. It's the tax code is a document that not a single person has read every word.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
It changes too fast. It changes too much. And so if you don't have just a really good idea of what works for you, and you have to really dive in, at least understand it on a better than a 30-second clip level, or else you could really enter into some major problems.
Yeah. So tell me the final sort of closing question that I've got in this. This is a bad question. The reason it is because it's kind of vague. You need the different circumstances of an individual. You need to evaluate them and blah, 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 blah. But what do you think is one or two of the number one or two strategies that you see real estate agents not taking from a tax perspective?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, easily. So the very first one that we look for is if they're an S corporation. There's something that we use called the Augusta rule. Are you familiar with that rule at all?
Yeah, yeah. It's the whole renting your home out for 2 weeks or something like that, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well
yeah,
done.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Good job, Ben Brady.
Oh, yeah.
Well done.
So, so you must be using it then, right?
Absolutely
So,
not. There's no way. It sounds like too much fucking work. I had it suggested to me, and I'm like, "What do you mean? No, I don't want to do it." Anyway, it was my own fault. I should do it. I should do it.
Best tax benefit you can imagine.
Yeah,
And
I
you
should do
literally
it.
Nothing different.
Yeah, it's section 288 of the tax code, really. And like you mentioned, it states that any person who owns a primary resident can rent out their primary resident for up to 14 days a year, and no cap of whatever comes in. And any money that's coming in, you don't have to worry about the taxes on that. Okay, but what we do for our real estate agents, right, is because they are S corporations. It has to be for an S corp. The way we've made it work is we have their S corporation, their business, renting out their primary residence once a month for their monthly shareholder meeting. This is why TikTok screws people up. This is why people who do this on their own it could screw them over, is because, and CPAs hate it, is because if you pull these strategies off that we recommend, you have to be dialed in, T's crossed, I's dotted, like on top of it. We do not just do these strategies we're going to willy-nilly half-ass it, right?
Well, let me, Mike. I want to interrupt there. I didn't do it. Do you know why I didn't do it? Because I brought it up with my accountant, okay, and she said to me, she goes, yeah, it's just like, you could tell she didn't want to have to go through all of that stuff. Right. Now, again, don't get me wrong. And like, if I pushed on it, she would have said yes for sure. But I just like, oh, whatever. And it was just a brush over moment. So you're 100% right. The CPAs, you need to push on your CPA, and that's what obviously you guys help.
Have to. That's half our job is advocating for our clients with CPAs. Like, one of the things that's so frustrating, I'll ask CPA, I'm like, I'm not asking if it's difficult. I'm asking if it's beneficial.
Yep.
You get paid to do difficult things. That's why you get paid so much money. That's your job to do difficult things. Yep. And some people, and if that's the scenario, a lot of people just outgrow their CPAs.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to also realize too, CPAs were always trained to be, just really keep you guys in compliance.
Yeah,
CPAs aren't trained to be strategic.
Job.
Can I, while we're down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, because I like where we're going. Can I ask, what's the percentage of agents that get audited? Have you been through it with them before? Like again, because everybody's always really petrified of that audit, and them getting that audit. So they're probably always really conservative, which is fine. That's okay. If that's your strategy, then you're conservative. But there's some people that push that fine line as well. At the end of the day, what are your experience with audits in real estate industry?
So we've actually not had a single one of our clients officially audited from the IRS. We've had it from the Department of Revenue here in Washington State, but not from the IRS. And they're very thorough, but the main issue is not ever the legitimacy or the validity of an expense or a strategy. It's the documentation of it.
Right.
So as long as you have a reason for what you're doing, you're good. Yep. All they can come back and say is, "Hey, we don't think that maybe you're being too aggressive on the Augusta rule. We're going to cut that down a little bit." And to be honest, there's no real clean rules. So as long as you have a justifiable reason and you document that reason, you should be in good shape. Like, be as aggressive and creative as you want to be, because at the end of the day, like, it's an opinion.
Yeah.
What normal and ordinary is the IRS code says a tax deduction has to be normal and ordinary for business. But guess who gets to decide what's normal and ordinary?
Yeah.
The business owner does, not the IRS. And so you just have to have a reason for it. So if your normal and ordinary is that you take clients out on your boat every single Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you want to buy a boat for your business, that is normal and ordinary for you and your business. It might not be for the next person in your brokerage, but it could be for you. Yep. And so you get to decide how you want to run your business, how you market your business, and what's normal and ordinary for you. So we just, so when Mike talks about like dotting your T's and crossing your I's, for us, it's like, do we just have a really legitimate reason for what we're doing, and can we document it? And if we can, like, you're free and clear. Like, there really shouldn't be too much of a problem, because then you're just in a he said, she said. But if you've got a good validity for it and a good documentation for it, you're going to be fine.
What do you say to this? Is that, like, so we had a brokerage of ours audited from the IRS. I was going to say probably about 2 years ago now, and I was like they called me, the business owner, and called me and goes, "Hey, we're going to get audited here." I'm like, "You fucking what?" Alarm bells, like, here we go, attorneys, let's go. Genuinely, it was a conversation. It was like, so guys, how did you bring in $10 million worth of GCI and then only make like $1 million revenue? And it was literally like, it was like, that's the real estate industry.
Yeah.
Like, where did it go? Well, 80% of it got paid to the agent. Oh, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right away.
But like, but seriously, they were just like, oh, seriously. Oh, okay, cool. Show us your independent contractor agreement. Or there they are. Oh, sweet. Thanks so much.
Right?
Yeah, and it was like,
they want to see the agreement.
Yeah.
Then you're good.
And that's why bookkeeping is so important, though. You can't just have an Excel spreadsheet. You got to have matching bank statements, documentation, where it went, line items. As long as you just follow the rules and do things correctly, like you mentioned, that's all they really care about.
But it was one of those moments where I'm like it's kind of like, and I'm going to leave the company name out of it because I don't want to be bashing too many people. It's kind of like when.
Oh, come on, have some fun, Ben. Ben, what are you being a coward, Ben?
The company may look like a device that you sort of use as guidance, okay, when you're out in the public, that no one under the age of probably 20 actually knows how to use them because they're on your phone. Anyway, that's the best I'll do. So like when you go public, when like the general investor doesn't understand the real estate industry, like, oh, we made $300 million revenue this month. Yeah, revenue's pretty good if you look at it that way. When you look at obviously what the real estate industry, makes at the end of it, it's actually not a good business. And from a brokerage standpoint, there's actually it's probably one of the lowest margin businesses out there, along with restaurants and everything along those lines. Yeah. And it's so amazing that in the general public that they can be sucked into the nature of like, oh my God, that business is doing $1 billion in sales volume, a quarter. It's like, nah, yeah, not really, and like, oh, they must be doing really well. And I think that lack of understanding actually goes across into the regulation sort of community as well. Mm-hmm. Even though you'd like to think that there's some specialty people in that, like, I can't believe the conversation that I had.
Yeah. Like let me give an example. This is a question we ask agents in our events and our classes often. I'll ask you. I'm curious to hear your opinion. What percentage of a real estate agent's job do you think the general public understands?
I have family that know I'm in real estate and still have no idea what I do.
Give me an idea.
I would go. So here's the percentage. I think it would be about 20% would think they know what we do. When fair enough. And 10% of them would actually know. Yeah, so they might understand 10% of your actual job. Yep.
Right? Is that a fair way to say it? Like,
fair enough.
If I say, hey, I'm a real estate agent, in their head, they're like 10%, they get it.
Yep.
No wonder they think you're overpaid.
Yep.
Like, they're understanding a microscopic level of what you actually accomplish and the value that you actually bring. Well, no wonder they think, oh, you're making billions of dollars. Like, they don't understand the complexity, the cost, everything that's involved with building a successful real estate firm. Like you guys have done such an exceptional job. Like, your stats are crazy, right? Like, we're on your website and seeing how many billions, like, that's incredible. People have no idea the cost of running a business that produces that kind of revenue that the owners will never, ever see.
Yeah.
100%. Never. And they all think you're overpaid because they don't understand what you do.
Yeah, that's a good
point. And so it's also the reason why we tell people, like, don't tell people you're a real estate agent. When they ask you what you do, tell them what you actually do. Don't tell them what your title is. Because the moment you tell them what their title is, then you just eliminated 90% of your value to that person immediately. Yep. And no wonder they're going to think, well, I don't want to work with that person because of all the things in the news and who's getting paid what and all that kind of stuff. And from our perspective, most real estate agents are pretty underpaid.
Yep. So to wrap things up, final thing, external to obviously someone picking up a copy of your book and reading through that and obviously getting a bit of an understanding, meeting with you guys, which again, we'll make sure that your information's in the show notes. But what is there any external other avenues that you guys can think of, podcast, other books that you've read that someone should probably pick up to get sort of a vague understanding or try and keep up on things?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the best books you could possibly get for like just real estate in general is Win-Win. It's Tax-Free Wealth. It's just an incredible, incredible tax book. It goes over all the different benefits of investing in taxes and real estate. For us, we tend to focus on like leadership type books and self-development type books because in our experience, that's probably the biggest game changer for real estate agents is just getting their mindset correct. Yep. Mike, what would you recommend?
Obviously I'll just self-promote our book too, but
yeah.
I think for real estate agents, so yeah, the self-help books work, but I think it goes further than just the books. I'm not a big reader myself, even though we wrote the book. Even with audiobooks, my brain just goes off into different worlds. So
I totally agree with you on that. Yeah.
The one thing I've learned, because I was never a business owner before this either. I was working in a warehouse before I got sucked into the whole financial.
We learned all this stuff too.
Yeah, it's really about. I mean, I know it's unbeaten something that people always say, but it's just surrounding yourself with the right people who are going to push you and who are going to actually not just talk about executing, but actually execute it with you.
Yep.
And then also realizing that you can outgrow people who you started with, and that's okay. And I think that was the hardest part. I always felt like I needed people around me who I started with to be with me forever, but then you just outgrow them. And right now, full transparency, I feel like in our community right now, sometimes I feel like I want more. I want to be surrounded by that next level of people who I can't maybe find necessarily here, but I want to be surrounded by people like yourself who are going to push me and are doing it and have done it to make me go to that next level. So on top of the books, it's actually, like Nathan says, at the back of our chapters, there's action items. But some of the books that we're recommending or we see out there, there's no action items. But I would create your own action item list at each chapter and actually do something from that book to elevate you to that next level, even if you don't see the action items directly in the chapters.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a blast. We really appreciate you joining us on Rethink Real Estate. And again, looking forward to hopefully a few more exercises where we can go through and maybe do a little bit of a strategy session in the next coming months or something like that, where we talk about some of the evolution and changes that you're seeing coming down the pipe. But again, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank you.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.